Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our panelists. One of the benefits of bringing a whole of government approach to a national security issue such as this is that it can bring the full force of the US government. One of the risks is jurisdictional ambiguity, a lack of a clear chain of command and organizational responsibility. So what I'd like to ask first is for each of you, and forgive me, I can't see how you're arrayed beneath the dais, but beginning with you, Mr. Downing, and then proceeding sequentially, to identify what it is that your agency, your component, has lead responsibility for in preventing and responding to ransomware attacks that none of the other components or agencies represented here has lead responsibility for. What are you uniquely responsible for ensuring happens and gets done to protect our cybersecurity?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. At the Department of Justice, we have two divisions that are responsible in part for responding to the ransomware attacks. My division, the criminal division, is responsible for those attacks that are identified as being from criminal actors. And so we have taken the lead on a very large number of the recent ransomware attacks. We bring charges, we make charging decisions, we work on the legal side to make sure that the law enforcement agencies are able to obtain the evidence that they need, and we pursue extraditions through our Office of International Affairs in order to get them back to the United States. My colleagues in the National Security Division support that work through a lot of different means related to national security authorities. However, when the actors responsible are nation states or proxies for nation states, then they would have the key role in all of the same ways that I mentioned: gathering evidence, bringing charges, and seeing those charges through to court.
Thank you. Mr. Borndren, please.
Thank you for the question, Senator. In response to your question, we would reference Presidential Policy Directive 41 from 2016. That was the first ever national policy on this topic and sought to define a significant cyber incident and answer your exact question: who's in charge? Instead of naming a single agency, it recognized shared responsibility across the United States government, and it defined threat response as involving investigation, attribution, and threat pursuit, and named the Department of Justice, acting through the FBI and the National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, as the lead agency for this line of effort during a significant incident. I'll certainly let Mr. Goldstein reference CISA's role. ODNI has a role in PPD 41, but I think another key takeaway.
I appreciate there's a broad spectrum of responsibilities here. My question is what is FBI's role that is distinct from every other agency represented here today? What do you do and your personnel do that nobody else does?
In PPD 41, investigate, attribute, threat pursuit for a ransomware incident.
Thank you, Mr. Borndren. Mr. Goldstein, please.
Thank you, Senator. CISA is uniquely focused on the cyber defense mission. In the context of incident response, we are focused exclusively on mitigating impacts to the victim and deriving network defense information that we can share with others. But we also focused significantly on what we would call left of boom, focusing on sharing information and providing services to reduce the prevalence and impact of cybersecurity intrusions before they occur for critical infrastructure, small, medium businesses, and SLTT partners across the country.
Understand. So is it fair to say that prevention and adaptation, is that what you're suggesting is your unique institutional role at CISA?
I would frame it, Senator, as prevention, resilience, and then in the context of an incident, mitigation.
Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Senator. The Secret Service is focused on protecting the nation's financial infrastructure and financial payment systems.
Well, you all have some responsibility for protecting those aspects of critical infrastructure, correct? My question is, what does the U.S. Secret Service lead on, or what operations do you conduct? What mission do you execute that is distinct from the other missions represented by your colleagues at other agencies?
Our distinction is that our statutory authority is focused on financial payment systems, the nation's financial infrastructure. And I think the distinction of trying to make singular entities is diluting the concept about this being a team sport. There is necessary overlap to provide defense in depth to ensure there's not a single point of failure that the adversary can exploit. We do have some overlapping authorities. The Secret Service focuses on financial payment systems and the nation's financial infrastructure, which does have some shared responsibility, but we are the leading agency related to those investigations.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. No doubt collaboration is important, so is clarity of purpose. And in the aftermath of recent significant cybersecurity failures, what I'm trying to establish is where there is sufficient clarity. Mr. Goldstein, would you please comment on how various sectors across the U.S. private and public sectors, so for example, the defense industrial base, the financial services industry, local governmental entities, the energy sector as represented, for example, by the recent Colonial Pipeline breach, how would you rank or contrast their respective levels of appropriate investment, preparation, and whether they engage in the kind of prudent and vigilant and disciplined and well-resourced cybersecurity efforts necessary to protect their networks?
Thank you, Senator. I'll start by just noting that apart from the agencies participating here today, there are a variety of other agencies across the federal government called sector risk management agencies that have unique expertise in promoting prudent risk management, both cyber and otherwise, across sectors of the U.S. economy that do play a critical role in this team sport, as Mr. Sheridan noted. Across sectors, there is certainly significant divergence in cybersecurity maturity, both across sectors, but also within sectors. Certainly, we have seen significant investment in cybersecurity measures and best practices in the financial sector, the defense industrial base, and the energy sector. That is not to say, of course, that every entity in those sectors is equally or even appropriately secure. And so we certainly need to focus on each sector and really shift our focus as well on national critical functions, because we know that a function upon which Americans depend, such as keeping the lights on, that relies not only on the energy utilities, but also the cross-sector entities upon which they depend. And so by looking at a functional approach, we can begin to ensure that these services that we all rely on remain resilient and secure against cyber intrusions.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.